So this puzzle is going to be an example of basically how to do a puzzle completely wrong. So for starters, this was a puzzle that I purchased that did not come with an image. It just came in a bag, no image. I knew it was a Cobble Hill 1,000-piece image of Canada geese. That was it, which made it quite tough. The next thing, this puzzle is random cut. I'm not very good at random cut. I like to be able to see borders and yank them out and figure out what to do from there. That's really hard to do with a random cut. I also shape sort. Again, not really possible with a random cut. If someone has how to shape sort a random cut, I'm all ears. And then finally, I was doing this puzzle on an IKEA dining room table that really is meant for a one-person dining room table. And I did not know the measurements of this puzzle before I started. And so what you're seeing is I don't actually have enough space on this table to really do this puzzle. I barely have space for it. And so I right now am starting to just put together pieces that I can see just to try to make a little bit of space. So one of the things that I find that I do in puzzles where I'm struggling with space management is I jump really quickly. Rather than trying to do any sorting or spreading, I just grab pieces that are one color, put them all together, stick them together, and hope that it just can, work for a little bit so that I have enough time to keep doing. As you see, I had paused this puzzle several times and returned back to it. It took me almost 8 hours, almost 9 hours, in fact. And so you'll see throughout the video, the light is going to change a lot because I was constantly pausing and coming back to this puzzle. It was not fun. So I'm starting now to build some sky. I was able to kind of spot that upper border. We are, by the way, more than an hour into building, and this is all I have. And it's not flipped because there's no space to flip. So I started building this border and said, okay, well, I know that there's sky. There's something that looks like grass, and I know that there are some geese in here somewhere. And so right now I am in the process of building some of that bottom border. I'm not able to connect it and actually see the proportions of the puzzle yet because there's not space on the table then to put all the pieces that I've flipped. I don't like using puzzle boards unless I'm in a team competition. And, generally at home that's no issue because I have my table and I can spread out my pieces. It did turn out to be a little bit of an issue here when I was working with a much smaller table than normal. You can also see that I'm getting a little frustrated and not really speed puzzling because I'm resting my hand on the table. I'm not Kristen Tuve. I cannot speed puzzle with one hand and set world records. I need both hands. I use one hand. Generally when I'm really going fast, I hold pieces in one hand or use it to hold the puzzle in place. I have a method that I call test and toss, which is basically I like to test pieces, and then if it doesn't work, I toss them to the side and continue going that way. Rather than spending a lot of time looking, I find if I spend a lot of time looking, it's not as efficient for me as testing and moving on. So because of that, it means I shift the puzzle around, I shift the pieces around, and so I use my left hand to kind of keep things steady while I use my right hand to test pieces. Anyway, small digression into puzzle strategy. In this particular Canada geese puzzle, I've now managed to get most of the border set up, and I'm now struggling to try to figure out, okay, there's this brown grass at the bottom. Can I get some of this brown grass built and put away? And because the puzzle is random cut, I'm really struggling because I can't shape sort the grass or the sky. There was not a lot of gradient in the sky, and there was a little bit, but not very much gradient in the grass either. So I am very much, okay, what can I do? How can I just test all these pieces to try to fit them together to basically get some pieces put together and get them out of the way? So doing that, I've now gotten frustrated with the grass and the sky and have moved on to trying to build some geese. The one benefit of this really tiny table that I was doing this puzzle on was that I was actually able to walk around the puzzle as I was doing it. So I was able to sort of work from the top by standing at the top, work from the bottom, standing at the bottom, almost like a team's puzzle. At home, to better replicate competition conditions, my puzzle table is actually up against the wall. So I can't walk around to the back. But, in competition, you also are not walking around to the back of your table. I don't know actually if they would stop you if you tried to, but I've never seen it happen. And I'm guessing that would be a hazard of bumping into people. So, puzzle still looks kind of like a mess here because it was still kind of a mess. I am just sort of trying to put together any random piece that I can to get some pieces out of the way into the puzzle and get a better sense of what I'm working with. It's kind of funny that this is a puzzle of Canada geese because in my family we have a long-running joke about how geese are jerks. And as I was doing this puzzle, I kept thinking, these are terrible geese, these are terrible geese. And so, fun, right? So you see I'm still trying to slowly put together some pieces. So another challenge that I have with the Cobble Hill random cut puzzles, so I like a lot of Cobble Hill's images, I like their piece quality, I hate random cut. And so it puts me in this situation where like, I actually like Cobble Hill as a brand other than the piece cut. I'm just slower at random cut and I didn't practice it growing up. I don't practice it now generally until it comes up in the speedpuzzling.com competitions. And so not a huge fan. But my challenge with random cut is I often just don't see the border. And so you have these gaps in the border then as you're working through the puzzle that make it really hard for me to understand what the proportions of the puzzle are. This is true both for this puzzle, which was particularly challenging, and for the general competition puzzles. You can see here that that's kind of manifesting as that right-hand side border still isn't done. We are now 4 hours into this puzzle, and that right-hand side border is still not done. I cannot see it. Keep in mind too, like my 1,000-piece puzzle time is like on the hard end is usually like 5 to 6 hours, an exception for some very hard puzzles. And a general Ravensburger 1,000-piece is between 2 and 3 hours for me. So this 8 to 9 hour puzzle here is a real standard deviation or two away from what I would normally be expecting. So what you're seeing now is, well, a lot of my head. Again, small table, I'm sort of in the way. I am really just trying to fit pieces wherever I can find them at this point. And that's because all of those pieces on the side, it's making it really difficult for me to see the patterns. It's making it difficult for me to know what to pull next. And I don't really have space to pull a bunch of pieces, build something, and slide it in. So I am just trying to build anything I can find within that border. And so, the other challenge is I don't have an image for this puzzle. So I don't know where these geese go. I know they go somewhere in this frame. No idea. And so that also makes it tough because it makes it harder to pull out groups of pieces and say, okay, well, I'm going to build this, and I know eventually it's going to go in this general area. You're just in this I don't know where this goes. I have a goose. Where does my goose go? Why do I have a goose? So, you're starting to see, though, I am more than 4 hours into this puzzle, and I'm finally starting to see some trends and some patterns in here's a goose, here's the grass, here are some clouds, and that, as I start to see the image, I'm speeding up a little bit. You can also see that I'm getting frustrated because I'm leaning. I'm actually using my hand to lean on, which is bad puzzling form. You're not supposed to do that. And just moving much more slowly. So I wish I had funny stories to tell about geese here. I found on the internet once that geese were called cobra chickens, which made me extremely happy. I find that unreasonably hilarious. But then I watched a New York Times video that was profiling geese that was extremely sad because it showed how geese build families and live together and how they're actually threatened by people, by roadkill, and by people who actually prey on them. And so now I feel very sympathetic to geese, even though they are kind of jerks. They do hiss at you when you run past them. So I have now in the puzzle, I have spotted a couple of geese, and I am now in a place where I'm finally getting rid of all of these dark pieces, whether they belong down below to the grass or up above to the geese. And as I am getting those pieces out of the way, it's making it easier to see what remains. It's easier to figure out how I'm going to attach all these geese to this border. You can tell that I'm getting excited that stuff is finally coming together and moving faster now. Yay, going to get this grass done. This really was a terrible puzzle for me. I think on my channel, this is one of the longest videos. This was one of the longest and hardest puzzles I've done. In fact, this and a pomegranate art puzzle called Salsa are my two longest puzzles. Salsa, my phone gave out like 3 times as I was filming it, so I don't actually have a full video of it. Not sure exactly how long it took me, but it was just basically a red background. That was all. A red background and a black bowl. It was gifted to me by a friend who said, "This is the worst puzzle I've ever done in my life. Here you go." I said, "It can't be that bad." And 7 hours later, regretted my life choices. I also regretted these life choices as I was working on this puzzle over almost a week of constantly puzzling on this and getting really sick of these geese. And at the time, I didn't have another space where I could puzzle. So I was like, well, I have to finish these geese so that I can have my puzzle table back. And I'm only doing 500s for a little bit. So I am starting to finally close up some of this puzzle. So yay, we've got this grass coming together. Nice work on the grass. One of the challenges too is that the backs of these pieces look a lot like the sky. So it's a little hard to tell too sometimes if something's gotten flipped over. But what's great is as I'm getting this bottom bit built, it is making the puzzle feel much more manageable for me. It's not actually much more manageable tactically, but it feels that way. So getting all that put together. As you see, I stopped the puzzle, came back to it later that night because I got a little annoyed. So I'm starting to see how I can connect these geese to each other, all of the dark colored pieces, and how I can connect the geese to the border. And why connecting the geese to the border was so important for me was that it really diminished the amount of space and the optionality for the sky, meaning that once I had the geese connected to the puzzle, it left long, narrow chunks where I could fit other pieces, which made it much easier to build the sky than having a bunch of things that the sky pieces could possibly connect to. So I am getting these geese more or less connected in now, still a little bit to go. As you see, I'm trying to test where these geese could go. This is something that if I had had a box image, that would have been really helpful. But I actually train without the box images sometimes because I find then when you actually get into competition, everything feels way easier. The challenge has been that as the world has gotten faster, I've actually wondered if I should start training with the box images again because it helps me think about strategy. One of the things is if you train without the box image, you learn pretty effectively how to spot big chunks of color and build them. The problem is that can be misleading. So for example, the 2024 Worlds puzzle had 7 tigers. If I hadn't had the box, I might have tried to build a tiger or 7 first, which would have been a bad strategy. So, yeah. As you see now, I have some pretty discrete chunks of blue that I can fill in on the puzzle, especially on the right-hand side. And so that is helping me speed up quite a bit. Doing a lot of test and toss right now, meaning trying to see if pieces that are a general color fit in a space, and if not, tossing them. This would be a place where if it hadn't been random cut, I would have definitely shape sorted by now. One of the other challenges with this particular puzzle and the limited space was that I actually had to keep a lot of the puzzle pieces on top of my puzzle, which fortunately there were some areas of contrasting color, so it wasn't a huge deal. I am in the last 90 minutes of doing this puzzle now, and I am speeding up quite a bit. I think I was also very excited to get it done and have my table back. So here we go. What's interesting too for me is that you can see how I like built these chunks and then ended up having to move the chunks because I thought they'd go in a place and they ended up not. Again, would have been much easier with a box image. But getting that bit over there, almost done. And filling it in. And we are getting pretty close to passing the 8-hour mark here. Puzzle was done over multiple days, obviously, because I have a job. Um, unfortunately. And so here we go. Speeding way up, way up, way up. And let's get it done. Beautiful puzzle, but awful.